Ever get stuck listening to someone just go on and on about the same problem over and over, like every little detail? It's like they're just totally lost, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes people think if they lay it all out, like every single piece, that somehow the answer will just magically appear.
But in therapy, especially in the world of advanced conversational hypnosis, that can actually be a huge roadblock.
Right, it can definitely get in the way.
So today we're going to do a deep dive into a technique that may sound kind of counterintuitive at first, interrupting clients for their own good.
Yeah, the idea is to help them sort of get unstuck from that story that they're so caught up in and really zero in on what actually matters.
Because sometimes, those big aha moments,
Mm.
those crucial insights are hiding in plain sight.
Exactly.
Now, you're an expert in advanced conversational hypnosis.
I've been doing this for a while, yeah.
So can you walk us through this? What's the difference between this approach and just regular hypnosis?
Well, traditional hypnosis, usually involves a more passive state. But in advanced conversational hypnosis, we're actively engaging with the client's subconscious mind through dialogue.
So you're having a conversation.
Yeah, it's about guiding them towards those deeper levels where real transformation happens.
Got it. And that's where interrupting comes in. Because our source material talks about clients getting so wrapped up in their stories that they miss the real gold nuggets.
Exactly. Imagine a client who's rambling on and on about why they can't lose weight listing every single thing they ate that day.
Been there.
We need to go deeper than that. Find the underlying beliefs and those emotional triggers that are driving those behaviors.
Okay, but how do you interrupt without seeming rude? Especially in a therapeutic setting where you want to be, empathetic and supportive.
Well, it's all about being strategic and respectful.
Yeah.
The source material mentions using phrases like, hold on a second, or let's pause there. You're not trying to shut them down. You're just trying to create a shift in the conversation.
Now, the source also mentions using a firm tone and even looking at them sternly. That seems a bit harsh, doesn't it?
It's not about being harsh. It's about signaling a shift in focus. You're basically saying, we're going to explore something important here.
It's like a gentle nudge.
Exactly. It's about using your voice and your presence to create what we call a mini trance.
A mini trance, what's that?
Well, think of it as a brief, subtle shift in awareness. By interrupting the flow of their conscious mind, even for a moment, we create space for those unconscious moments to emerge.
And those are the moments where the real breakthroughs happen, right? The source material made it sound like these unconscious moments can be pretty fleeting.
Absolutely. They're often short, maybe just a few words or an image that flashes through their mind, but they can hold incredible insight into the root of their problem.
So as the therapist, you're listening for those subtle cues, those hidden gems amidst all the rambling.
Precisely. And that's where the skill comes in, being able to discern what's truly relevant and what's just noise. It's about guiding them back to those gold nuggets and helping them understand their significance, because often they don't even realize they've said something profound.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is amazing what can come out when people feel safe enough to just let it all out.
So this is all super fascinating, but I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what does this mean for me? Can I use this in everyday life, even if I'm not, you know, a trained hypnotist?
Absolutely. The principles behind this technique can be applied to any conversation where someone's kind of stuck in their story. Think about a friend who's always complaining about their job, but never actually does anything about it.
Or that relative who calls every week with the same drama, going over the same details again and again.
Exactly. By learning to recognize those moments when someone is just kind of cycling through the same thoughts and feelings over and over, you can use gentle interruptions to help them break free.
So instead of just like nodding along and offer those empty platitudes, we can actually help them to shift their perspective.
Right.
But how do we do that without coming across as like insensitive or dismissive?
It's all about listening with intention and then guiding them back to those key points that might hold the answer. Instead of letting them spiral down that rabbit hole of irrelevant details, you might say, hey, remember when you said you felt unappreciated? Let's talk more about that.
So it's about picking up on those crucial threads, those gold nuggets, and bringing them back into focus.
Exactly. And sometimes that simple act of refocusing their attention can be enough to spark a new insight or a shift in their thinking.
It's like you're helping them untangle the knot in their mind.
Hmm.
But the source material also mentioned that mastering this technique takes practice and skill. It's not as simple as just interrupting whenever you feel like it.
Right. There's a real art to knowing when and how to interrupt effectively. It's about being attuned to the flow of the conversation and recognizing when someone is truly stuck versus just processing their thoughts out loud.
So it's not about silencing them or cutting them off. It's about guiding them towards a more productive way of thinking and communicating. And the source material emphasized that this can be beneficial not just for the person who's talking, but also for the listener.
Absolutely. When you learn to listen for those unconscious moments, those subtle hints of truth that often slip out unnoticed, you start to develop a much deeper understanding of human behavior and motivation.
It's like you're tapping into a whole other level of communication.
Yeah, it really is.
But wouldn't interrupting someone constantly make them feel unheard? How do you balance this technique with active listening?
That's a great question. And that's where the advanced part of advanced conversational hypnosis comes in. It's not about peppering the conversation with random interruptions. It's about being present, attentive, and using those interruptions strategically to guide the conversation towards deeper meaning and understanding.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between listening and guiding, supporting and challenging. It sounds like this requires a lot of self-awareness on the part of the listener.
Absolutely. You need to be aware of your own biases, assumptions, and tendencies. Why are you interrupting? Is it to help the other person or to steer the conversation in a direction that suits you? The more self-aware you are, the more effectively you can use this technique to truly connect with others and help them break free from their own limitations.
It's like you're holding up a mirror to their subconscious mind, helping them see themselves more clearly. And I imagine that can be incredibly powerful, both for the person talking and for the person listening.
It is. And the beauty of this technique is that it can be applied in so many different contexts, from personal relationships to professional settings. Anytime you find yourself in a conversation where someone is stuck in their story, you can use these principles to help them shift their perspective and find new solutions.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of the power of language and how we can use it to help others break free from their own limiting beliefs and behaviors.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to experiment with these techniques in their own lives.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question. Think about a time when you or someone you know got stuck in a story. Maybe it was a repetitive complaint, a negative thought loop, or just a tendency to over-explain every single detail. How could you have used this technique of skillful interruption to gently guide the conversation toward a more productive outcome? What phrases could you have used? What tone of voice or body language would have been most effective? Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? How we can use our words to help others and even ourselves break free from those patterns that aren't really serving us.
It's powerful stuff, for sure. We often underestimate the impact of our words, both on ourselves and the people around us.
For sure. And speaking of impact, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of advanced conversational hypnosis. It's so much more than just, the stereotypical image of swinging a pocket watch and saying you are getting sleepy.
Right. It's a constantly evolving field that draws on principles of psychology, linguistics, even neuroscience.
Wow, and it sounds like it takes a lot of skill and finesse to really master it.
It does, but like any skill, you can learn it and hone it with practice. And the rewards are huge, both for the practitioner and the client.
So for our listeners who are intrigued by what we've been talking about today, what's a good first step towards exploring this further?
I'd recommend starting with some solid resources. There are some great books and online courses out there that can give you a good foundation in the principles and techniques of advanced conversational hypnosis.
And I bet they'll discover it's a pretty amazing journey of self-discovery too.
It really is. By learning to listen more deeply and communicate more effectively, we not only empower others, but we also unlock so much potential within ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the art of interrupting with intention. Remember, the next time you're in a conversation where someone is stuck in their story, think about how you might use those interruptions as a way to guide them towards something more positive and transformative.
Sometimes a well-placed pause can lead to a huge breakthrough.
So true. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating exploration of the human minds and beyond.